Hi and welcome to the Birth Confidence Summit. I am Charlotte Canny from Birth Essence, supporting women to feel confident about giving birth. And today we welcome Liz Stanford. Liz is a mother of three and she is also the owner of the Calm Birth School, a hypnobirthing instructor herself. So welcome, Liz. I'm pleased to have you here.
Hi Charlotte, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be chatting to you today.
So tell me a little bit of your backstory and how you got passionate about birth and supporting women and eventually owning the Calm Birth School.
Oh wow, okay.
Question.
So yeah, that's a great question. So I was always really scared of giving birth. I was the youngest of four, never been around babies or birth. Everything that I'd heard was pretty terrifying. So it wasn't something that I was looking forward to or relishing the thought of at all as I was growing up. And also my nature was that I was a very anxious child, teenager, into adulthood as well. So when it actually came for me to become pregnant, I did actually put off getting pregnant for a few years. When I became pregnant, I felt that fear so intensely that I really didn't know what to do with myself. I really didn't know how to resolve it. I really felt like I was stuck in between the pain that so many people told me that I was bound to experience and how horrific it was going to be, and then the solution to the pain, which was take all the drugs that you can. That also terrified me as well. So I really didn't know what to do or how to resolve that. But I eventually did find something which helped me, and I've never looked back from that point. And it was finding hypnobirthing that really changed how I felt about my pregnancy, how I felt about giving birth, and how I felt about myself as well. It had such a profound impact on me and my life that I really felt that I have to pass this on to people. Like, people have to know about it. So that's definitely where my passion came from. It came from my own experience, and then that's kind of been fueled by, since I've been teaching and the kind of women I'm coming into contact with and how they feel about birth and the difference hypnobirthing makes to them as well.
And when you first started doing hypnobirthing, how long did it take to make an impact or make a difference for you?
I really felt like it felt really quick to me, even from the first person that I taught. Like, I can still remember them now, and I'm still like in contact with them now. It was like about 7 or 8 years ago. The difference that it made to them was astounding, and I'm not talking about creating like this perfect birth experience that so many people hear about. I'm just talking about creating or helping women to feel confident and to become confident in themselves and in their bodies so that they can have these positive experiences. I think that's really where we are right now, is that we have lost, or women have lost, so much confidence in their bodies and their own abilities when it comes to birth that, no wonder we kind of dread it and we don't know how to deal with it or how to make it into a positive experience. Yes, it felt very sudden for me, that impact.
Yeah. From the first starting. How did you discover it initially? Did it just pop up for you? So
when I was pregnant with my first child, I was, how old was I? I was 27, and I was the first of like any of my friends. Only my sister had a baby at this point. So I didn't really know where to go to get information. So I was literally just Googling, how can you give birth and it not be awful? Or how can you have a good birth experience? And hypnobirthing eventually came up. So this was actually 12 years ago, because my daughter is, she's just turned 12 quite recently. So it was just over 12 years ago when I was pregnant myself and I was researching how I could have a positive birth experience. And when hypnobirthing came up, I'd honestly never ever heard of it. I thought it was, I didn't know what I thought it was actually, because the term hypnobirthing does conjure up quite a few images in our minds. But after reading about it and really sort of looking at some of the research behind it, I felt that it was the right thing for me. And I'm so, so pleased. I booked myself and my husband onto a course, and we did it. And we just, both of us, we changed how we felt about birth. I honestly went into that birth experience with very little or no fear at all. And that would not have been the way it was for me if I hadn't have found hypnobirthing. So it was absolutely meant to happen. I'm a believer in, you know, synchronicity and fate and all of that sort of stuff. So it was definitely meant to happen, and it made a huge difference in my pregnancy and my birth and my life, absolutely. And that birth itself wasn't completely straightforward. I had intervention, and the fact that I had hypnobirthing in my back pocket meant that I could sort of navigate that experience, and be as calm as I possibly could, feel as in control as I possibly could. And again, I know that I wouldn't have reacted that way if I hadn't have had that kind of preparation beforehand. And I really want that for other women. I want them to know that even if their birth isn't straightforward or doesn't go as, you know, they hoped it would, that actually hypnobirthing is something that you can apply to any situation to take as much control as you can, or to feel as much control as you can, and to feel as calm and as positive as you can as well.
Yeah, that's really great. I noticed right at the beginning you were saying it felt right for you, and it seems to be a theme at the moment of intuition. I'm writing a blog post, and I was talking earlier, and I think this is a really key point. You found a path that was right for you, and you knew, right? When you found, you were looking, you were Googling, you were lost. When you found it, you knew, right? And what you did is act on it. You took the action then to follow that path, and it worked for you because that was the path that the universe was saying, this is your path. So I really like that intuition.
And yeah, definitely. And again, I think when it comes to women, when we're talking about birth, we have lost a lot of confidence in our bodies over, like, you know, generations, and things that we've heard about birth really make us distrust our intuition when it comes to it. But I'm so pleased that I really believed and took the leap to ensure that I had that for me during pregnancy and giving birth. And the difference it made, I honestly believe, is absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, women should absolutely trust their intuition more, because we're pretty amazing. I'll never get over the fact that a human being grows inside of us and comes out of our bodies. This is surely the most amazing thing in the world, you know? So I think that women are much more powerful than we give ourselves credit for, really.
Yeah, we don't give ourselves enough credit for anything, do we? No, we kind of take it for granted that we're growing the baby. Maybe not all people, but it's funny for me how it's the birth bit that we suddenly panic over, when if you look at what we've actually just done with the body, where you have this tiny little egg and sperm, which is nothing, and you grow it automatically without thinking about it, without really doing anything. Even malnourished women do a really great job of growing babies because the body provides. I'm not suggesting anyone should go, not, you know, it's important to look after your body as well. That helps you a lot. Yes. Others that will suffer, not the babies. So, you know, you need to look after yourself. But and then we kind of, there's a sort of societal panic over the birth part, as if we can't do that, as if we've learned that we can't do that, yet we've just done the whole growing bit.
Yeah, we don't put enough emphasis on that. Yeah, and all the things that women do to aid that, like, you know, like staying healthy and, you know, exercising and sleeping and other things that we can do to kind of like aid the pregnancy and help ourselves to feel good as well. But like you said, like, it just happens without us doing anything consciously, and it's remarkable. really, and it will just forever blow my mind that we are that powerful, that we grow human beings. And so anyone who's having, you know, in their pregnancy, when they're having like a low day, or, you know, they're feeling fearful or frightened, I think really honing in on that, like, what is my superpower? Growing a human being, like, that's pretty remarkable. Definitely works for me.
In the hypnobirthing, it's not all about the hypno side, is it? There's a lot of education on the physiology as well, and I think,
Yeah,
do you feel that's
absolutely.
very helpful for women? Because a lot of the comments you hear, you know, how does a big baby come out of a hole that size without any, like, and it's like, well, because it doesn't actually. You're right, it doesn't. That would be impossible, because the hole isn't that size when you're giving birth, you know, and it's kind of like another
Mm.
mindset thing, that the hypnobirthing is a lot with the mindset to
Yeah,
understand the
absolutely.
physiology.
Yeah, that all plays a part in it. So hypnobirthing is a full antenatal education program. So women will come to a hypnobirthing course, or they'll maybe do an online course, and they'll learn about the physiology of their bodies and of labor, and they'll understand, you know, how their baby is going to make this amazing journey. And once again, just like we don't give ourselves credit for how we grow these amazing little human beings inside our body, we women ourselves, we don't give ourselves credit for all the amazing things that our body is going to do during labor that aid the birth of this, you know, wonderful little creature that we're going to have in our lives. And there is just so many things that your body does, again, without you being really consciously aware of it, or you know, or knowing about it, that just helps with the whole birth process. So I think once women understand a little bit more about the fact that their bodies are designed to give birth, and I don't just mean by like the shape or the size, although that does, you know, obviously contribute to it, but the design, the makeup of the female body, it allows your baby to be born. You know, it's all part of nature's design. So yeah, the whole getting something this big out of something this big is just not true. Your body will open and expand for your baby. And I think once women get their heads around that, they start to feel much more comfortable and more confident about it. And also getting an understanding of how the uterus works, and what a surge is, or what a contraction is, and you know, how to sort of navigate through a contraction or a surge, and how to do that as calmly and as comfortably as possible. Yeah, there's so much education that goes into a hypnobirthing course. It's definitely not just all like the hypnosis side of it. It really is all encompassing.
You mentioned you went with your partner as well. So why do you feel that's really helpful to go with your partner to these classes?
Because they play a massive role in it. You know, I think, again, society has sort of taught us that it's kind of like it's all to do with the woman, and the man hasn't got any kind of role in it. But you know, whether your birth companion is a man or a woman, the person who's going to be in that room with you should be the person that you are closest to, that you feel a connection with, who can support you through that labor. So just by being close to somebody that you love during labor is going to make you feel safer, calmer, and that's going to help you to release more of the hormones that you need for labor. So like the oxytocin and the endorphins. And that's really powerful in itself, but not just that, although that is like a major part of it. It's having somebody there that you trust, who can support you and who can advocate for you should they need to as well. So there's many situations in my pregnancies and my labours where I needed the support of my husband to help me make decisions and to just talk things through. And I find that to be really, really powerful. Not because you don't feel like you're alone. So I think many women feel like birth is something that they have to do on their own, and that can feel very lonely. But if you bring your partner into the experience, and you're working together, it sounds cheesy, but like you're a team, you're working together, then that can be so reassuring to women to have that support, that safety net, to feel loved and cocooned and supported. So it's definitely really, really important to me. I praise my husband greatly for his birth companion skills, because he's definitely done very well. In particular, my third birth was a planned home birth. So I wanted, a birthing pool, and I had it all set out, candles, and I had my affirmations. Honestly, it looked beautiful, and I was really looking forward to getting into the pool and giving birth at home and having my children around me. But it wasn't meant to be. It was recommended, and I did agree, that I should transfer from home into hospital for a suspected medical issue. And that was quite frightening, to hear that kind of in the middle of my labor. Right, no, there's an issue. You're going to have to stop what you're doing, and you're going to have to let go of this desire to have this beautiful home birth, and you're going to have to go in to hospital, or that's what they were recommending. And of course, I knew that I could have refused, and I knew what my rights were, and I talked to my husband about it, and we decided that the best thing to do was for me to transfer into hospital. And without him there to kind of hear me say what I needed to say, and to let me have that panic, and then for him to sort of stop me and say, okay, right, so we've made our decision, we're going to go and do it. So you need to, in fact, his words were, you need to do whatever it is you do to get your head straight, technical, to get your head straight, and to, get yourself back to feeling how you were. And that really worked for me. That really, really helped. So definitely big up to my husband there for all of his support during all of my labours, actually. Yeah, that's definitely powerful to have that person there with you.
I like the story. It's both of you as a team, like you said, because one of the important points I hear from that is he let you have the panic. So you didn't try not to stay calm, in that you let those feelings come out, run their course, and then you were able to make the journey back to the calm, strong place. And you knew your right. You tuned in to say, yeah, I agree with their point. Because you could have tuned in and gone, nah, they're fearful, but actually no, he can be born at home. And then that would have been the right thing. But you tuned in and went, in this case, we're going to do this. And then you, because of that choice and that the way you did it, then you feel good about that still. You still honor the change of plan. Means you've got these emotions come up, and then we give them a bad rap, but actually you let them and you move through them, and then you're still on your track, just a different one.
Absolutely. And I can't honestly express how amazing that whole birth experience was. It was totally not to plan, and it had a lot of plot twists, but it was amazing. And I look back on it and I feel so proud, actually, of the way that I managed to deal with that. And so once again, if I personally don't believe that I would have dealt with that situation so calmly and positively if I hadn't have had my hypnobirthing knowledge and preparation in my back pocket. I mean, okay, this was only sort of 4.5 years ago. So by that point, I was a teacher, and an experienced teacher, and I'd given birth twice before. But I'm still a woman and a mother with the same fears as everybody else. So I still did my own hypnobirthing preparation extensively, actually, throughout that pregnancy. And it was there for me when I needed it. And yeah, I ended up giving birth on delivery suites, in where people who are usually sort of classed as high risk would give birth. It was like the total opposite to what I wanted, but it didn't deviate from the fact that it was an amazingly empowering experience. And yeah, I think hypnobirthing helps me have the logic in my mind to be able to shift my tools and techniques and my mindset over to another scenario, so that I can still create this positive experience.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to give birth again now, Charlotte.
I think that's why so many birth workers have larger families. They've had some kind of journey,
Yeah,
some kind of journey with birth, and when you have a positive experience, you want to do
yeah,
it again. It's beautiful, and I'm really glad you said that, because so many women are dreading the path of birth. So to hear as many people as possible say it was wonderful for me, and especially with all these different stories that you know, there's all kinds of different births, but they're your stories, they're your
yeah.
birth path,
Yeah,
and
I think we can
really
learn so
encouraging.
much. Yeah, we can learn so much from other women's experiences. And with hypnobirthing, where it used to be when hypnobirthing was, first sort of like started to become popular, it was very much that we were only hearing these kind of perfect, pain-free type stories that were kind of out available for people to read about and hear about. But I think, the tide has definitely turned, certainly over the last few years. And I can only really speak for the Calm Birth School, but we share stories that are perfectly imperfect, and we share them all over our social media platforms, whether they're from women who've done the online course or women who've worked with one of my instructors. We want other women to see that actually hypnobirthing isn't just about perfect and pain-free birth. It's about applying it to your situation to make it as positive as possible. And so, that applies to an emergency cesarean. It applies to instrumental births. It applies to a home birth, which turns into a transfer, and all other sorts of birth experiences. And by reading those stories or listening to those stories, women can unpick their fear again, because they can see that, okay, so it doesn't have to be exactly as I've imagined it in my mind, or exactly as I want to have it right now. It can still be a very positive experience, and we can learn from each other. So I think it's really powerful to share stories and to just keep learning from one another, definitely.
Yeah, stories are so
I want
powerful.
to ask you about your births now, but you're the one.
We swap the interview around. Well,
Yeah.
I will actually be talking about some of my own births. So I'm going to interview myself, and I'm going to open the series. So well, I do have 3, and one of them's on the blog. The story, bits of them are on my blog
Great.
post. So I'll put some links up, and I will.
I'd
Because
definitely be
mine were
interested.
born at home, but I had a journeys again from fear to confidence,
Mm.
and each birth that I had deepened my confidence in
Yeah.
different ways. And a lot of my passion for doing it differently came from the knowledge of how I was born, because I trained already as a therapist from feeling lost and depressed, essentially sort of the
Mm.
white Western problem, not having a sense of purpose or direction, not feeling I belonged, not feeling I had a right place in the world. And a lot of this actually came from my birth. So when I started to do my own healing and looking at cellular memories, I got taken back spontaneously. We were looking at what's the cellular memory blocking you today kind of thing. And it went back to my birth experience when I was born. And
Wow.
so because I knew I'd experienced that as traumatic,
Yeah.
I was very determined. The kind of determination you often see with second-time mothers who were
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm not doing it that way again. I now
Yeah.
know what I didn't know. And then they have great second births because they know. I had
Yeah.
already, I had that because I knew how it felt to be born from that experience. So I was like, I'm not having my children be born like that. So
Yeah.
I did a lot of work, including hypnobirthing. I did hypnobirthing alongside some other like cellular memory release that I think
Mm-hmm.
worked well together with hypnobirthing. It strengthens the hypnobirthing because
Yeah.
it's like programming, and you know which program's winning kind of thing, which is why
Oh.
practice is so helpful on the hypnobirthing. Because I specialize on working with women who have the deeper programming that can be fighting with hypnobirthing.
Yeah.
So then but the hypnobirthing was so helpful for me too. Um,
Brilliant.
and times of my second birth, it was helpful again. Like it wasn't just with the first one. Different fears, different child, different time,
Yeah.
different situations. And I think the children bring their own fears for you to work through with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that determination. I think it's one of the hidden reasons for fear, because we don't consciously remember our birth and
Yeah. No, it's
the other.
powerful.
So it was really powerful to Now, whatever the method is, it's like looking at the part of this conversation is all those different methods. And like you did, you like, which one's for me? You don't know what you don't know. So then you get them together, which one's for me? And then, that one's what I want to do. And that's the one that works best for you when you tune into what's right for you. It might not be what next door neighbor did or the other person did. So whether it's hypnobirthing or not, when you go, that's the person, that's the doula, that's the course I want to do. Even choosing which hypnobirthing course to do, because there's so many now.
Yeah,
I think when
I know.
you go, okay, that one, because they're all good, right? So that one, listen to the voice, see if you like it, and it'll be right for you.
Definitely. I think that just part of it for a lot of women is kind of accepting and acknowledging that they need to do something to kind of help themselves feel better or less fearful or more confident. And even that is a really big step for a lot of women. And yeah, hypnobirthing is just one of the things that women can do to help them to get into the place or the zone that they need to get into in order to have a good birth experience. So absolutely.
Did you find that what you learned becoming a mother, giving birth, sort of transferred into your ordinary life as well in some way?
Yes, I did, because I mentioned before, I was always quite an anxious person, definitely very anxious as a child, and I was very good at covering it up as a teenager, but it was definitely there. I had lots of rituals and things like that to kind of help me sort of cope with how I felt. And it really wasn't until I did hypnobirthing course when I was pregnant with my daughter that I actually started to make the connection, the mind-body connection between like what I was thinking and how I was feeling, and how the two were impacting each other. And so once I'd learned that, and I'd learned tools that could support me with my anxiety, which were relaxation tools and breathing techniques at that time, I found that to be so powerful. That really helped me. And then also, with hypnobirthing, we're looking at changing those deep rooted fears that we've got about birth. So in terms of birth, when I was listening to my hypnosis relaxation tracks for birth, or my affirmations for birth, they were changing how I feel about birth at the time. But what I found was that they were also changing how I felt about other things as well. So it was impacting how I felt about myself and how I managed my anxiety. And I found that to be astounding. And still, when I'm teaching today, and what I hear from my instructors is that hypnobirthing has a profound effect on so many women. So it is far-reaching into motherhood, into and into the rest of your lives. We like to say, like, it gives you tools for life. It certainly did for me, and I'm so happy and grateful that it did.
Wonderful. What do you see? Now, how do you see that women's confidence is getting undermined? What do you see? What kind of ways is that happening at the moment?
So I think that a lot of women, when they become pregnant, it's probably the only time that women kind of hand over themselves to someone else to make all the decisions, and that's like usually the medical care providers. And this happens, I see this so often, is that women feel, and I'm sure you're going to talk about this a lot with a lot of the people that are being interviewed, but women the use of language is really disempowering. So I hear women saying a lot, I'm not allowed to, they wouldn't let me, etc. And that really jars with me, because women need to know that they are the key decision makers when it comes to pregnancy and giving birth. And we need to have the confidence to talk to our care providers as if we're on the same level, not as if the care providers are up here and we're down here and we're just sort of bowing to whatever it is that they're telling us. We need to be able to have the conversations with them on the same level. And that's not to say that, you know, we reject everything that the care providers tell us. You know, just like my own experience, I didn't reject what my midwife was suggesting when she suggested that I transfer from home to hospital. I listened to her. I did my own analysis of it. We like to use the BRAINS acronym in hypnobirthing. So I thought about the benefits, the risks, the alternative, what my intuition was saying, what would happen if I did nothing. And it helped me to come to a conclusion. Whereas a lot of women might find themselves in that situation and they might not consider what are the benefits and what are the risks. They might not consider what, you know, their heart or their body is telling them to do in this situation, and they might just do as they're told. And there's nothing wrong with that, but for a lot of women, that might not be the right decision to make. It might be that they then don't feel that they're part of the decision-making process. They might feel that it made their experience not as positive as it could have been. And yeah, it can be just disempowering. So I think that that's where a lot of women feel that that they've not got enough confidence or knowledge to speak to the medical care providers and to kind of really get an understanding of, you know, what they want and what's being recommended and what is the best route for them. And really, it's just about asking questions and giving yourself time to make decisions. And usually there is time to make decisions in these types of situations. So yeah, I think the only way to overcome that is education. I think the NHS is just it's impenetrable almost. So women need to start with themselves. So start with building up their bank of knowledge about birth, building up their confidence in their bodies and in birth and labour and how the whole process works, so that they feel that they're able to be that they can contribute and that they can make viable decisions for themselves and their baby. That's where I see that we can make the impact. And so things like this, Charlotte, these types of summits and places where we can gather together and people can share knowledge and stories, it is going to be really powerful for women in that way, personally.
Yeah, wonderful. That's really great. I think it's such a key point, that knowledge to give you confidence that you can question.
Yeah.
And because if you don't question, it's somebody else's birth experience you're having, like someone else's recommendations, and they may or may not be right for you because they're recommendations. And often they are right, like you said with the wrong way. Often they are, but not always, because they can't know your body as well as you can. So what it is from a rational place, a scientific place, on paper it might all look good, but you are the one giving birth, so you know whether you're following the rational paper or whether you've got a different plan. You know, it's the difference between trying to plan in theory and risk analysis and all of that to the actual reality on the ground, where it doesn't matter if 99% of people will do it this way. You could be the 1%, and it's only by knowing your own self and your intuition. So then you can go against the grain if you are that 1%, but if you're not the 1%, or you know, whatever the percentage is, you can choose, and you're the one who knows which is the right choice then. So you've found your choice. So I love it that you did that in birth yourself. You checked in with yourself whether it was right.
Yeah, definitely.
Really powerful.
And it was right. And I don't regret it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But I might have to have another one so that I can have my home birth. Don't let my
husband. Have you told your partner?
So he's like, no, we're done. And I'm like,
Yeah. Women, I've found that women know when they're done very clearly. And like, you know, if you're not sure, sometimes there's something to, like a ritual or something, and you find that information. But most women I know, they know when they're done.
Yeah.
We'll see. Keep me posted.
We'll see.
Sometimes it's a timing thing. I did some grief work on my own womb recently because I wasn't sure. I felt like I was done, but I wasn't sure. And my womb wanted to grieve for not having children there because that's what wombs like. You know, they like to be.
Oh my
So
gosh,
then, like
that is
now, I've
so
got the
powerful.
yeah. So you can do that, and
That is a good
then
idea.
creative projects like this have an energy that's connected to the womb because it's created
Yeah.
in the world that's being pulled to do from your heart and your womb.
Hmm.
So sometimes it might not be a baby, it might be something else, but you can know, you can do rituals, you can complete for each child, and you can, sometimes there's a grief process for that the womb's not
That
pregnant.
is so interesting, Charlotte. I would love to know more about that, definitely.
And it's very simple. You can just, at the most simple level, you can tune in your
Mhm.
relaxation, put a relaxation on that you do, and just put your hand on your womb and say, what do you want to tell me today? Just listening. Do you know how to do that? You're a hypnobirthing instructor. You
I
already have
know,
the skills,
I
right?
can,
You have the
yeah,
skills. Sometimes it's the thought of like how to apply them differently. When I speak to
yeah,
people, we always have, our life has led us in the direction that we have all the skills we need for this
hmm,
moment. Even if it's the skill to say to someone, I don't know what next, give me an idea, and then you get the idea from someone else. Sometimes it's inside,
hmm,
sometimes it's outside. But so your skills as hypno, apply them to, your womb now, just as you would if your
hmm,
baby was there, because your
yeah,
baby, so talk to your womb. Same,
that's so
same, same,
true.
same, same.
So
Everything has a
true,
consciousness. Everything has a consciousness. But yeah,
definitely.
beautiful. So what's your vision for the future of birth and motherhood?
So that is a very interesting question because this is something I do think about a lot. So I mentioned before that my daughter is 12, and when I think about her in the future, maybe, I don't know, 25 years or something like that, when she's going to be having her first children, or maybe sooner than that, I don't know. Or maybe not at all. It's entirely up to her. But when I think about her having children, I really want her to approach her birth as something that is going to transform her and her life. And I really want her to feel that and experience that, and not just for her, but for all future generations. I want women to feel excited about the power of birth, and to feel how amazing it is to connect with your body and with yourself in that way, and all the lessons that you can learn from that pregnancy journey, from growing that tiny little, like we were talking earlier, that tiny little seedling in your body grows into this entire human being who's going to be in your life for the rest of your life. And all of that is just so transformative. And then we have the actual birth experience, which is when you really connect. I personally believe you connect with who you truly are. Like, you come face to face with the most powerful, highest version of you. If you can, release and let go of as much fear as possible and embrace the birth. I just really want that to be something that is just so easily accessible for women in the future. Whereas now it's accessible, but we have to wade through a lot of fear in order to get women to be feeling this way. And it's often, it can be difficult to deal with care providers, and it can feel like a lot of women can feel like they're not supported in the way that they want to feel supported. And I just want it to be a given that this is an experience that is transformative, that needs to be accepted, and that's amazing. Yeah, that is what I'm hoping for the future.
Beautiful. Really beautiful. And what would you suggest to a woman who, what do you suggest to women that come to you who are really terrified, like you were, I guess, in the beginning, as a starting point, or what they can do, find that confidence?
Yeah, so I think that the very first thing is recognizing that they don't want to feel that way, and recognizing that there is something that they can do to change how they feel about their pregnancy or about giving birth. And once they've made that recognition, then they can take steps to educate themselves, to fill their metaphorical birth toolkit with as many things as they possibly can, and slowly take those steps towards becoming confident, knowledgeable, so that they can navigate their way through pregnancy and labour. But it does just start with that one tiny acknowledgement of, this is how I feel and this isn't how I want to feel. What can I do to change it? And then there's just so many different routes that you can take. So if a woman is interested in hypnobirthing, there's so many different ways now that we can access information about hypnobirthing, from books to online courses to face-to-face classes, online forums on Facebook, where women are sharing different things and different stories. So there's lots of ways that we can access that kind of positive, empowered education for women.
Beautiful. That's really great. One of the things that these conversations are that I'm convening for the summit are where we're talking a lot about things that don't always get talked about, that get missed off. And I think that's one of the things where women are being done a disservice when things are off the table, or you don't acknowledge, like you said, acknowledging where you feel is the best starting point. So I know that mental health can be really important, and motherhood can be a time when women get isolated, lonely, they're doing this new thing, overwhelmed by hormones. And so tell me a little bit about them. I know you did suffer a bit from postnatal depression with one of your children, and you've come through that as another journey to confidence, supporting yourself. What would you say about that?
So my postnatal depression experience was very, very challenging, I would say. So I wasn't actually diagnosed with postnatal depression until my middle child, who is now nearly 10, until he was 2. So it was a very, very late diagnosis. And actually, now I look back on it, and even at the time, I had one medical professional saying to me it was postnatal depression, and another medical depression saying to me it's just depression. So as far as I'm concerned, it was a period of depression. Whether it was postnatal or not, it doesn't really matter. At the time, I was desperate to hang a label on it so that I knew what it was. So I was trying to, can someone just tell me what is actually going on here? But now I'm happy to just say it was what it was, postnatal or depression. And I'm not actually sure when it started, but I had the most amazing birth, which I haven't actually mentioned yet, but the most amazing birth with my second child. It was incredibly straightforward, no intervention, no dashes from home to hospital. It was wonderful. And I guess when women have experiences like that, you probably think, you're less likely to experience any kind of depression or low mood or anything like that afterwards, because you've got the elation of this most amazing birth. But I really struggled. Probably that started to happen within the first few weeks. I could feel myself sliding down in a mood, in a low mood direction. But it was slow. It was, for anyone else on the outside, it would have been difficult to pick up, until one day, so 2 years after my son was born, I was driving to work. So I had a job in an office at the time. It was a part-time job. I was driving to work, and the way I describe it is, it literally felt like the shutters came down and I had to pull over, and I can remember screaming because I was really scared. And I drove straight back home again, and phoned my mom, and we went up to the GP together. And I remember the GP saying to me, it's just because your child's not very good at sleeping, you're working, you're really tired. It's motherhood and family life, it can get on top of people. And she said, I'm going to give you some antidepressants, And she said, within a month, it'll be like the lights come back on and you'll feel like yourself again. So I took the tablets. She also gave me some other tablets as well. So some to help me, sleeping tablets, and some other tablets to help with my anxiety, which was sky high at that point. So I started taking the tablets, and a month later, the light bulb never came on. I really didn't feel any better at all, and it actually started to get quite a bit worse. But at that point, I decided that I really needed to take control myself. So a little bit like when I was pregnant with my first child and I was so fearful, I decided to go looking for something. So again, I went looking for something to help me navigate the way I was feeling in this experience. So my knowledge around like mind-body connection and the techniques and the tools that I had were really useful, and I used them during that period. But what I wanted was, I felt like I needed some relief from my body. I don't know how else to explain it. It felt so heavy and tight. So I started doing a course of Reiki. So I went for Reiki like every week, and that really, really helped me. I also did group counselling, I did private counselling, counselling on the NHS as well, CBT. I did lots of things. So I had a real journey kind of back to myself. And it probably took about 12 months to get to a point where 8 to 12 months to get to a point where my family started to notice that I was improving. And then I would say maybe another 12 months beyond that, where I knew in my head that I was better. Yeah. So it was a real journey, as something that I guess I kind of suspected, and this was a limiting belief on my part. I think I always thought that I would get something like postnatal depression because I had been such an anxious individual, and self-fulfilling prophecy, if you like. But now I look back on that experience, and it has taught me so much about myself. Like, literally, if I can get through that, I can do anything. That's honestly how I feel. I feel like there is no mountain too big to climb. I can do it. Still get nervous and worried about new challenges and things like that. But having experienced that, I've seen actually how strong I am and how determined I am. And so in that way, it was a very deep learning lesson for me. And I think I hope it's not triggering for anybody to hear that story, but it's bound to be triggering for some people. So I just want to say that if you are experiencing postnatal depression, or you're worried about experiencing postnatal depression, I think one of the best things you can do is just start talking to people. I wish that I'd paid more attention to how I was feeling after I'd had my second child, and that I had spoken to people. I'm from a very close family and I've got a very close relationship with my husband, but still, I wasn't talking about it. I wasn't even really noticing it. So tuning into ourselves and talking about how we're feeling and getting support are all things that we can do to help prevent us sort of spiraling into this, deep depression, or it can help us come out of those feelings of deep depression.
I think it's a powerful story that I hope will be really helpful, because it's very common to experience challenges because motherhood changes us so much, and the lack of, I feel like the mother isn't put central, and like you said, you didn't automatically talk about it. There's a kind of minimizing. We were talking about it a bit earlier in the interview, of minimizing what's important to you, or minimizing things that means we can rationalize it away, what we're feeling, as if that's not important.
Yeah,
bit like, you've got your baby, you can rationalize it. I've got the baby, I've got the house, I've got this, I've had a great birth experience. Why am I feeling upset? Well, actually, it doesn't really matter why you are. So you start acknowledging, and then you can find maybe your story might be to find the reasons, or it might just be to work through it. But
yeah,
like I said, acknowledging where you are in
absolutely.
birth, anytime.
I think sometimes postnatal depression can be compounded with these feelings of guilt of like, why do I feel like this? I've got everything I've ever wanted, and my baby's amazing, and why can't I be happy or feel happy? And women beat themselves up about it, but it you just have to accept that this does happen to some people. It happens to a lot of people, and you can work through it. And I just think that getting support, listening, tuning into yourself, trying new things to help. Like, so with me, I was really, like I said, like my body just felt, I don't know, like it needed some relief, or I needed to do something that was going to help with this. It was like an overall feeling in my body, the depression. And so I'd never done Reiki before. I'd heard of it, but I'd never done it before. And I just found it so powerful. But sometimes, if sometimes we don't explore other options, and that's sometimes where the answers are. So if you try one thing, oh, that hasn't helped, don't be afraid to try another thing, because there could be something out there that could give you that relief, or that can just, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that you can and you will get better. So yeah, that's my advice. I feel very passionate about mental health and helping people to normalize it, and we don't do enough talking about it. So that's why I'm always happy to talk about my experience, because I don't have any shame over it, and I don't have I don't hold on to anything from it. I mean, it's nearly 8 years ago since it happened. And although if I closed my eyes and tuned into it, I could probably feel a bit of what I felt then, but it feels like it's very far away from me now, which is good, definitely.
And you can deal with it if it came again, because you've done it.
This is it as well. And and I would never rule out that I could have another spout of depression, or feel those feelings again. But yeah, I have the reassurance now of knowing that actually I'm perfectly capable of working through those, and and that I can do it. And it's again that feeling of like, I can do anything because I've worked through that. I can literally do anything. Yeah. And actually, sorry, just while we're talking about it, I think it's important, because when I was pregnant with my third child, I did have this fear about getting postnatal depression or depressed again after having another child. And that was one of the big fears for me during that pregnancy. And I just want to say to somebody watching this who maybe has suffered from postnatal depression in a pregnancy, that it's not automatically guaranteed that you're going to get depressed again or postnatal depression again, but just to seek as much support as you can during your pregnancy, and almost put a plan in for when baby is here, so that you have as much support as you can possibly have, and just keep talking to people about how you're feeling and tuning into yourself. So again, in that pregnancy, I had Reiki all through that pregnancy, and I did all my hypnobirthing preparation right from when I found out I was pregnant right up until when I gave birth. And I think that I felt so mentally well in that pregnancy. It was amazing, actually. It was really, really good. So I just want women to know that all pregnancies and labours and births are different. So just because you've had one that's, maybe you feel you perhaps don't like thinking about because it could have been non-ideal or traumatic even, or that you've had postnatal depression, doesn't mean that you're going to experience that again. And there's definitely things that you can do is support yourself in the next pregnancy. Absolutely.
So it certainly shines out when you tell the story that you've moved on from them and let go of it, because you're strong to talk about it. You're full of life now, talking about those births and the time after. So I think that in itself gives a lot of hope and support, that people can see there's another side, that you're kind of showing them what the light at the end of the tunnel looks like. They can get that support that way.
I hope so.
Yeah, that's really great. So do you have any final thoughts about anything really, but about what women could really take away with for this, about preparing for a confident birth?
I think that women need to believe more in themselves. Like, this is definitely something that I think is really powerful. But again, belief comes from confidence. So it is all about starting, deciding that you want to change how you feel about giving birth, and whatever that is going to be, whether it's hypnobirthing or some other form of preparation, whatever feels right to you, just getting started on it. So many women prepare for, I don't know, like, if you're, this is a really stereotypical example, but like, if a woman is getting married, she's going to plan that wedding, isn't she? If she's taking a family on holiday, she's going to plan that holiday. Even packing a case or something, we women tend to plan things like that. Taking an exam or a test, or if you've been to university, we will have done study, and we'll have studied, we'll have researched. But we kind of let go of that when we are pregnant and when we're preparing to become mothers. So I think acknowledging that birth, parenthood, breastfeeding even as well, which we haven't mentioned, is something that we can plan for, that we can prepare for, that we can build up our knowledge base about, and that will ultimately lead to us feeling confident and us having belief in ourselves, which in turn will lead to a more positive experience.
Thank you. Yeah, believing in ourselves is a great way to end. So thank you so much for coming on today, Liz. It's been a pleasure to speak to you, and I've enjoyed listening to your stories.
Good. Thank you for inviting me. I've enjoyed it as well.
A lot of benefit to you too. Sorry, for everybody listening.
Thank you.